From WXXI News, I'm Racquel Stephen, filling in for Evan Dawson, and this is Connections. Before they become butterflies or moths, caterpillars play a critical role in supporting biodiversity within our ecosystem. While some may scold them for chewing through leaves and defacing the plant life you may have spent weeks trying to grow in your garden, these creatures are a vital part of nature's food web. They are a food source for birds and other insects, they support pollination, and their waste nourishes the soil. One environmentalist even went as far as saying that humans wouldn't be able to survive without them. From their intricate designs and textures to the beauty of metamorphosis, these organisms support our environment in more ways than we could imagine. The importance of caterpillars is captured in Jeff McKay's documentary film, The Extraordinary Caterpillar. The Broccolo Bee-Friendly Farm and Gardens in Fairport will be hosting a special screening of this film on June 29th, of which we will go into more detail during this episode. But by the end of this hour, my panel of experts will hope to sway you into becoming a caterpillar lover and enthusiast as we explore the hidden world of these small and pesky herbivores and the biodiversity within our region. I want to welcome our guest in studio today. I have Laurie Broccolo, the owner of Bee-Friendly Farm and Gardens. Hi, Laurie.
Hi, Racquel. Thank you.
Nice to have you. And I have Farrell. Kevin Farrell, the Senior Director of Conservation for Genesee Land Trust. Hi, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And on the line, I have Kyra. Is it Kyra Stephenson? Am I pronouncing it right, Kyra?
You are, Racquel. Thank you.
Yes, Shakira is a nature-based learning coach for the Rochester City School District. I would like to welcome all of you for this discussion. Now, I'm one of those people that were like, hey, caterpillars turn into butterflies, and you know, that's what it is. But there's a lot that goes on. But before we discuss everything that caterpillars do, Laurie, can you tell us about Bee-Friendly Farm and Gardens? I know your mission is to create the best looking yards in the neighborhood using an environmental approach. What does that mean, an environmental approach? What does that contain?
So everything we have done since the beginning 36 years ago is make sure that we reduce pesticides and show people how we can take care of landscapes without really killing a lot of innocent bugs out there, for example. And then it's evolved over the years into how to prune properly so that you have less pests. And then as we're replacing old-fashioned plants, making sure that we plant with a purpose and choose plants that are going to host caterpillars or birds or, you know, bird-friendly yards and things like that.
So you intentionally pick plants that agree with our ecosystem.
Exactly. And I've got our garden center to a point of 80% of our plants are natives now. And that is a huge goal that has evolved as more and more people are understanding natives and actually asking for them and being able to eliminate the plants that really don't serve a purpose at all, other than they're pretty. I mean, pretty's great, but how about...
So native plants, can you tell us what native plants are?
That means that it grows in our northeast area.
Okay.
So then we can get really picky about native plants and say, all right, does it grow in the Finger Lakes area or does it grow in the Genesee River region? Because there's so many different microclimates from, you know, up by the lake, sandy soils where the glaciers came through, or carved out areas where it's all heavy clay, or the limestone types of soils in the Finger Lakes area. And all these different plants require different, you know, environment, sun, shade, types of soil, pH, et cetera. There's a lot of science that goes into it.
Yes.
So native means it's from the region in general. And then there's nativars, which are cultivars that are bred from the native plants, but maybe for a little bit more color or attractive interest. But they still have to function because some cultivars don't actually function. And insects cannot actually get to the nectar because of the shape of the flower was changed during that cultivation.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I can see your passion as we talk about this. And you said 80% of your plants are native. Is that compared to like other gardens or yards? What is that in comparison to? There's like 60% is normal, or?
No, what do you think, 10%?
Wow. Wow. So you're surpassing the like normal way, you're way surpassing that.
Yeah, just really passionate about it, and so is everybody that comes and works at our company. They have background in conservation or, some kind of environmental interest, or, a lot of the people that work for us are hunters and fishermen. They just know what they see out in the field, and those were never available, those plants in the garden centers for people to replicate and attract the birds. So it's just kind of comes natural. It's like nature is so gorgeous, and people do not get to experience a lot of nature. That's really what, for me, it's all about, is sharing with the community and experiencing it right in your own backyard.
Wow. And what else can we find at Bee Friendly Farms and Gardens?
Oh, besides beautiful plants, really friendly.
Beautiful native plants.
Friendly, knowledgeable people. And we are located on an old farm from the 1900s. It's a historic old dairy farm. And we have lots of woods and different habitats also. But the main thing is that when you come out there, I think you feel like we're only 3 miles from Wegmans in Penfield, but yet you feel like you're going way out into this urban area, and you get to experience the barn swallows, for example, that are my husband hates those barn swallows because, they make a mess everywhere. So we cover the things that are in the barn and let them nest. And I love them because they keep the insects away from where we're shopping.
And so would you consider yourself, what is it, entomologist? Is that the word I'm using? Is that the right word?
My husband likes to call me environmental wacko.
We're not going to call you that on Connections, Laurie.
And I just want you to know, I think of that very favorably because it just shows, I say that proudly. Being a tree hugger from the 70s and finally feeling like we're really accepted now and people are yearning to learn it. COVID helped tremendously. People got to look out their windows and start noticing birds and their activities, and then all of a sudden they wanted to attract more birds and more butterflies to their yards. But now we're talking about the moths that people don't really notice because they fly at night.
Yeah. And we don't like moths.
Why?
Don't
I know.
Oh, yeah.
Don't we have like moths? I remember back in the day where my mom would put mothballs, right, in our clothing.
Right.
So we were trained to think of moths as creatures that are bad.
Exactly. And it's because moths are unseen. And this is a whole new thing, too. Let's go mothing. People like to go birding early in the mornings and catch the birds. Let's go mothing and go find the moths at night, right after dusk, and start finding ways to really enjoy them. Leaving lights on this outside screen in the morning when we lived in the woods, every morning we'd find all different kinds of interesting moths, and I would just take pictures of them. I also love AI now for the fact that you can take a picture. I know, but it's all at your fingertips. So I discovered a moth the other day in my yard that I thought was a butterfly because it was a day-flying moth, and it was orange. I don't think of, moths being that color, and it was really tiny, but there was a lot of them. And then my photo, Google showed me that it was a chickweed moth, they call it, is a common name. And it loves clover, and I have clover growing, and it is one of the main contributors to the inchworm caterpillars that the birds absolutely have to have during nestling season.
Yeah. And you discovered all this through AI. So you took a picture of the moth and you kind of filtered it through AI.
Exactly. Yes. So and now people are coming in and asking for plants because they looked it up all the time. They're coming in with their lists. Yeah. So the research is right there.
I didn't even think about AI being a part of this conversation. So I want to explore that a little later. But I want to get to Kevin and the work you do at Genesee Land Trust. What are the responsibilities of Genesee Land Trust? What is Genesee Land Trust?
Yeah, great question. So we are a local nonprofit organization that preserves and protects natural lands and waterways that enhance the quality of life in the greater Rochester region. So we have acquisition programs to acquire those high-quality habitats that might have those unique butterflies, caterpillars, moths, or other wildlife. or wetlands that are really important for wildlife and humans and just green infrastructure. We do a lot of farmland protection work, making sure our region has farms that produce those wonderful farm stands that we all like to visit in the summer, and then programs that connect people to nature. You know, people falling out of love with nature for many reasons, and that could be its own episode in particular. But having programs that really speak to individuals' interests in what that is to be outdoors and how it can really help them, you know, physically, mentally, emotionally, and really just the benefits of the outdoors.
Yeah, and I love to compare our region to other regions, right? Compared to other regions, where does the Finger Lake kind of rank as far as our ecosystem and our natural environment?
Yeah, so in New York State, there are a variety of different, you know, land trusts and other groups that are working to conserve land. You know, one of the things we come back to in the greater Rochester sort of 7-county region is that this is a place that people love. And why do people love it is because we have a mix of scenic farmland, of working farms. We've got nature preserves and nature parks where folks can get out and recreate close to home. You know, we're not a big city that's going to take you 4 hours to get to a big hike, and we're close to so many great resources. We're rich in water resources from the Finger Lakes, the canal, the Genesee River, Lake Ontario, and we're just a good spot to be. So there are a lot of parcels and smaller areas that are worth protecting, whether it's old woods, again, grassland meadows that support birds and pollinators, or other resources that even connect to people too and make people's lives better, whether that's providing more shade with the lens of climate change or transportation corridors for, you know, walking and biking.
So if I was a caterpillar, would I want to be in our region?
That's a good question. With my bird hat on, you know, one of the trailer for this documentary, Dr. Doug Tallamy says chickadees in particular need 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to fledge one group of their young.
Yeah.
So if I was one of those caterpillars, I'd be a little worried. And we're such a great spot along the lake for birds in particular during migration in the spring and the fall that some caterpillars, unless they're, you know, very well hidden, which many are, you know, might be risky.
Yeah.
I always think about when I've flown to other places and I fly back. Went to Costa Rica years ago, and everything is green and lush, and there's so much to look down at. And when I was flying back in, and I looked at nothing but black rooftops, black parking lots, and lawn after lawn after lawn. And during the summer, the lawns are brown. And I'm like, oh my God, if I was a bird, I would not want to land here.
Yeah.
So fortunately, Rochester, though, has a much prettier landing and inviting environment. There is a lot more lush land. It's still way too much farmland and way too many lawns that have gotten rid of the habitat that's needed for the...
And Laurie, you're not being biased at all.
No.
I want to read this quote by Natalie Payne, who is executive director of Saunders Finger Lakes Museum. And she described the Finger Lakes region. The Finger Lakes region is one of New York's greatest natural treasures, and inspiring public awareness of its biodiversity is critical to its future. How would we respond to what Natalie said?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree with that. The Finger Lakes and, you know, greater Rochester region is such a unique space because of the variety of habitats that are here. You know, I mentioned earlier about water resources. Yes. I mean, in Rochester in particular, I mean, we've been dubbed a climate haven because the amount of climate migrants and refugees who are coming either forced or on their own to come here because we are have a climate that is under scenarios will be relatively safer under some of these other big cities like the Southwest, et cetera, with climate change. So having these spaces that caterpillars and wildlife depend on are also spaces that people depend on. Yeah. And I think people around the world are saying, hey, that Finger Lake spot, I've heard about that. That's pretty cool. I'm going to go check that out or move there someday.
Yeah. I want to get Kyra involved in this conversation. Kyra, you are a nature-based learning coach in the city school district. Pardon my ignorance, Kyra. I don't think I've ever heard of this title. What is a nature-based learning coach? What does that do? What do you do?
So I think the easiest way to kind of describe what I do would be help connect our youth and our children to these natural spaces and all of our beautiful living creatures, from the tiniest to some of our big old trees that are within the city of Rochester.
Yeah, and is that harder to do in the city, in the city school district, and within the urban setting, and not really being exposed to nature? Is it harder to get students enthused about our trees and our environment?
Well, this is year 4 of our program at School 12, and I would say that the culture now makes it really easy within the environment of our school. Our students have a completely different appreciation for our living kin than they did years ago. So I would say that it's actually easy now, and one of the jokes I always say is, where do you start with a nature-based learning program, or how do you start with getting people connected to nature? And obviously, number one is to open the door and go outside, but then also providing time and space. And that space can be some of our cracks within the sidewalk or parking lots, or strips of our greenery between buildings and spaces. And we're very lucky in the city of Rochester and the surrounding areas to have the nature that we do and the trees that we do. Obviously it's not equitable, and that's a big push with things that we're working on as to who has access and the ability to spend time in nature. So that's a big part of my passion and what I do for my job.
Yeah, and Kyra, do you like insects at all? And caterpillars? What's your take on these small creatures?
I do. I'm often asked what my favorite animal is, and I never have an answer, because I tell everyone that I can find the uniqueness and the beauty in pretty much every living thing. Even the mosquitoes, they are the food for the bats, and I'm a huge fan of bats. So I'm a huge fan, and I think insects are a great entry point for kids to be curious and slow down and to learn how to be gentle with another living being.
That was, what, you just made me appreciate mosquitoes. I never thought I would. Thank you, Kyra. And for everyone, caterpillars, right? Just your general take on them, and how do they support biodiversity?
Just generally, caterpillars, as a child, I've just always fascinated with how many different shapes and colors there are, and how they mimic and look just like a twig. You have to really look, and then all of a sudden you see movement, and it's like, oh my God, that was right there in front of my eyes. So the patience of just observing, and then the calming of nature. So caterpillars and nature in general, they all just really go together.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're energy converters. Caterpillars are eating leaves from native plants. Many rely on specific plants, and they're converting the energy from the plant into proteins, into fats, and then from those caterpillars, birds will eat them. Many birds get their beautiful colors, like our warblers in the spring, these red, these yellow, orange, from the caterpillars that they're eating. So then it supports the entire food web because of what they're doing. So, I think one of the unique thing is just that I heard, an oak tree, for example, can support more than 1,000 butterfly and moth species. 1,000, which is from one oak tree, versus a non-native, like a ginkgo tree or something, 3 to 5 species that supports. So think if people were to plant more oak trees and more other native plants, that would really support caterpillars and the entire food webs that they're part of.
Ooh. And Kyra, I know you were speaking on how you feel about caterpillars and what they do for our ecosystem.
I think for me, watching children that, almost like what Laurie was saying, where for one moment they're like, nothing's here, I don't see anything. And then once they see that caterpillar, and then they are able to notice all the different detail, and make comparisons. This looks like this, and this looks like, the color purple that I saw somewhere else. And so being able to make those connections, and then understanding that this little creature has so much to learn from whether it's its own role in the ecosystem, knowing that it's going to change into something else. So that idea of that change is inevitable and what can we learn from change? And then the connectors. We have a group of fifth graders this year that have become intense birders. And so they know that being able to see those birds and having the birds have what they need comes from these little critters and these caterpillars. And like I said too, it's really about giving time and space for kids to slow down, be able to wonder, and then make that connection with this little critter that they may never have noticed before. And the fear goes away and the empathy starts to grow. And then they find them, they're connected with them. And so they want to protect them and they want to learn more. And what plants do they eat? And how do they get to the plants? And what do they turn into? And now you start to build this beautiful ecosystem of biodiversity and make all those connections where our students are a part of that.
Wow. And how important is putting this together for your curriculum, Kyra? Like, what does your curriculum look like as a nature-based learner? I would love to come to your class every day and like, we're going outside.
It's funny because a lot of times people are like, wait, you just play with sticks? And I'm like, oh, no. This is when you have nature as the teacher, right? So I'm not the teacher. The classroom teacher is not the teacher. When you have nature as the teacher, the curriculum is engaging, it's dynamic, it is accessible to all kids, no matter where they are, all people, no matter where they are, whether it's a bad day, good day, reading levels don't matter. Everything becomes accessible when you have nature as the teacher. And we do get really in depth. Our third graders focus a lot on pollinator gardens. And actually, Laurie and Broccolo was a huge support for that last year, where we planted specific plants and we looked at form and function of pollinators versus the plants that they need, and created this incredible learning space with the University of Rochester for not only pollinators and plants and animals, but for children as well. So the curriculum is everything that I do is, and here and what we do is tied to standards. It just is dynamic, like I said, because of nature being the teacher. And it can be math and social studies. I mean, we had to have the kids look at how many plants do we need to support the pollinators, to support the birds in a certain ecosystem. And then the history too, the history of the land that we were planting these different native plants on. So I could go on and on. Yeah.
And Kevin, I know you mentioned, caterpillars take the plant energy and produce protein in the birds. What else? How do they support pollination? We've been hearing that a lot, the word pollination. How do they support that process?
Yeah, so, caterpillars, will mostly feed on native plants. Once those caterpillars go through metamorphosis and become butterflies or moths, then they're very much important pollinators throughout our landscape. So I would certainly defer to Laurie's expertise on that, but are just, with the other insects, just so important, dragonflies and the like, to what we rely on.
Go ahead, Laurie. I know you're well versed in this. Please educate us.
I'm just thinking about all of the plants and how specific they are, though. To like spice bush is a plant that we sell now a lot because one, it's deer resistant, and it blooms early in the spring, and it's a great little pollinator plant, tiny little flowers. But then that is the only plant, one of the only plants that the spice bush swallowtail butterfly can lay its eggs on. And so just learning how important one little plant can be in this entire ecosystem where we are overrun by deer, for example. And these are all the things that you mentioned, Saunders Finger Lakes Museum. And I got involved with that. The person, John Adamski, it was a dream of his years and years ago. It was just a dream. And to see it coming now to actually flourish, and that we not only have lots of property that's already been developed with wetlands to get people out there closer to nature, but now the actual museum building is being built. and the exhibits are taking place now as we speak. So a destination where anybody can go throughout the entire Finger Lakes, Rochester, Buffalo, of course, people from other areas, but to have something like that really close that people can experience, and it changes all the time because outdoor experience is just as much a part of that museum as the indoor experience. Sorry, I got carried away on that, but I'm just so excited because nobody knows about it. That's the other thing. That was one of the reasons I really wanted to get this information out to our community. Yeah. Knowing about caterpillars is one thing, but knowing about all these great organizations and what's going on in our community, like Kyra does, and Genesee Land Trust, and there are so many, the Audubon Society, and on and on and on, all of these great supporters of nature. Bring them together and let other people know that they're right there at your fingertips. You can join in, be part of the movement.
Yeah, and you're always learning, right? You said you attend insect farms and you enjoy. Laurie is like a kid right now. We're talking when we talk about insects, you light up. What is something new that you've learned? When you go to these places?
One of my favorite things, just to look at all the different mimicry of the insects and how they can hide and look just like a leaf. It's absolutely fascinating. Stick bugs, to see a stick bug in real life, seen them in pictures, but then to actually see one and let it walk on you. So just thrilling. And yes, I do. I feel like a child. And this is one thing about nature is it brings a child back out in you. And my favorite students, so to speak, are my clients, the adults, and being able to show them a ladybug larva doesn't look anything like a ladybug. And it's actually not very attractive, but it's so cool. And yet people see bugs and their thought is, I got to get the spray.
Yes.
I got to kill it.
Yeah.
There's a hole in the leaf, so it must be killing my plant. No. Native plants can handle a few holes and support the caterpillars feeding on them. Yeah. It's just a whole world of wonder. It's like a Discovery Channel right there in front of you every single moment. You turn and find something new.
And I want to invite our listeners to join in on this conversation. You can give us a call at 1-844-295-8255 or our local number 263-9994 if there's any insect enthusiasts out here, caterpillar enthusiasts, or you can just comment in our YouTube channel. Kevin, what do we need to do to make sure that insects and animals that are important to our ecosystem do have this space, this natural environment, this space to really thrive? Is there something that we should be doing better?
Yeah, I mean, there's many things. I mean, the start, to start is thinking about native plants, thinking about what's in your backyard. What Kyra mentioned was profound about, looking in the cracks of our sidewalks. I mean, we don't have to travel to the Adirondacks. We love the Adirondacks. We love these other great natural resources around us, but there's so much in our backyard. So being able to slow down and observe what's there and understand what it relies on. Laurie mentioned AI tools, but there are different apps like Merlin, which is a bird identification app, which will tell you what you hear when a bird is calling, and then Seek, another app, which takes a photo of a caterpillar or a leaf, which will help tell you what it is, and then learn a little bit about it. And then you might know, hey, this is a giant swallowtail. It relies on prickly ash as a host plant. So you can really support caterpillars and all wildlife by just understanding what's around you and then being an advocate in your community. If you want a mix of green space, farmland, and development, show up, be an advocate in the town or the city that you live to help share your voice with your vision for the future.
We do have a caller and we do have some comments, so we're gonna address that when we take after this break. We're talking about the world of the caterpillars right here on WXXI Connections.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra. The 2026-27 season ranges from Beethoven to Broadway, the Nutcracker to John Williams, this September through next May. Learn more at rpo.org. And Bob Johnson Auto Group, believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. Proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson, focused on the news, issues, and trends that shape the lives of listeners in the Rochester and Finger Lakes regions. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com.
And we're back with WXXI Connections, and we're here talking about caterpillars, the small but very important creatures in our environment that keep our ecosystem going, our food web going. What food web? I know what that means. What is that? But I don't think our listeners know what that means. What is our food web?
The food web is the cycle of the insects and everything, including fungi that break down the plants. It's so much more involved, and maybe Kevin, you're better at explaining the
you're
academic
saying fungi.
Yeah.
So the things that we don't like. Laurie, you're telling me all the things that we don't like are important.
Very. All these microorganisms, the soil is so alive, and you have no idea what is in there and how much they need air, for example, loose soil versus compacted soil. I was thinking about the question about the one thing that everybody can do, because pretty much everybody has lawns. We can just pick a spot in the lawn and stop mowing it. You could just literally stop mowing a section, make it a grassy meadow, and start to see what comes up. Or you can start to develop it and add the native plants. But the easiest thing to do is to start to forget about these perfectly manicured lawn. And I hate saying that because I'm in the lawn care business, and that's actually it seems
counterproductive.
Yeah. But you can have beautiful part of the lawn and then also support the landscape. And so that is the easiest part, is to change back to nature and stop having everything so mowed and manicured. And then you also reduce carbon footprint by doing that as well.
I think you're creating some enemies here, Laurie. So no manicured lawn. So we're so used to pulling weeds, and I heard weeds are good for caterpillars or insects.
Many of the weeds are. Now, there's invasive weeds, and
Okay.
that's something we can definitely talk about too, Kevin. That's a huge battle because they come in and take over our native plants. So, yeah, it's choosing the right weeds.
Yeah.
I like some of my weed gardens, butterfly weed and milkweed and ironweed and Joe Pye weed. There's a lot of weeds that are really awesome gardens. Yeah.
This is amazing. Weed and awesome. I never thought would be the same thing. Well, it depends on what kind of weed. But Kevin, can we talk about the food web, and what do we need to know about this food web, and how does Genesee Land Trust kind of incorporate themselves into this?
Yeah, so when I started learning about ecology, the study of the outdoors, the living things, the first rule that you learn is that everything is connected. So for a food web, that's understanding that, it's a circle, so we got to start somewhere. But the leaves that fall from a tree are broken down by our decomposers, like fungi. Mushrooms will emerge, and then there are things that rely on that to nourish themselves, whether that's amphibians in vernal pools, or plants that will come and produce food for the caterpillar. Yeah. Then that will provide food for the bird. So at Genesee Land Trust, we're just very cognizant on the composition of species that we're able to protect and habitats that we're able to protect to really have the highest quality and most healthy properties or habitats that can support the most amount of species. So sometimes it's just a few acre parcel, but it's really important because it's surrounded by houses and development and lawns that are essentially deserts for wildlife. And then some larger properties that can support larger animals like great horned owls, pileated woodpeckers, and more, coyotes or other just larger mammals. So it's very much a spectrum, but really finding those spaces that are important not just for wildlife, but again, important for people too.
Yeah. And Kyra, when you're talking with your students, how do you explain to them the importance of everything, like Kevin said, being connected, right? Even from the weeds to the large animals.
So that's key to our program, is that we take the lens of that we are a part of the ecosystem. And I was a science teacher for years, taught ecosystems every year. And a lot of times when it's taught, it's separated from the human aspect. And so you're looking at all these other living beings and how the energy moves through all of the habitats and the ecosystems. And here it's about that connection and where we are so that we create an ecocentric view where instead of humans being top down, right, that we're a superior living being, we are a part of it. And what is our role? Which fits in perfectly, what Laurie was saying in terms of the lawn. And this is funny because my husband and I have this discussion often, and we have this one row. He has come a long way, Laurie. He's no longer mowing the milkweed, and props to him because there's a few that he's mowing around. But you see the benefits of that. There was a monarch butterfly on the milkweed yesterday because it's starting to grow a cluster, and it's just a small part next to our driveway. And so, to the value of our kids understanding that they have a role in this along with all the other living beings, and that all the other living beings have value as well, then changes how they choose to make decisions, how they speak, and actually how they behave. I mean, this is now a culture of protecting animals, and especially the insects. We rescue insects. We don't kill the insects. Students will tell on teachers if they kill a fly or anything. It has happened. And so it's really kind of exciting because, like Laurie said, that childlike feeling that a lot of us adults like when we return to nature, we're enhancing that, right? And so our students at a younger age are going to be making decisions that when they are homeowners or when they can make decisions as to where to invest money and things like that, they're choosing ecosystems and that eco world over other.
Yeah. And I'm proud to say that I don't kill flies anymore. I actually let them out. Like I open the window and I can see because they want to get out. So I'm like, okay, I know you want to get out. Just let me open the window for you and you can go back to being a part of our ecosystem, right? So I just want to just give myself a little credit here that, I may be a future, environmentalist. You never know if journalism doesn't work out. But I do have a caller on the line, Laurie from Rochester. She wants to talk about monarch butterflies she's seen lately. Laurie, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Hey, Laurie. Yes, you're live on the air. You can talk to our panelists.
I just wanted to say that I used to be the kids in the schools called them the Kodak scientists. Kodak had a program called 21st Century Learning Challenge, and we'd go into the classrooms and teach science. And the most fun I had at any of those teaching classes was when we took them outside to Kodak to the pond on Elm Grove, and we let them see what they could find out there. But as far as monarchs, I've been collecting eggs and caterpillars and raising monarchs, but taking them into the senior centers where my parents have been. So I'm taking the food away from the birds, but I don't get that many. We get maybe a dozen a year. But
wow, Laurie,
sorry,
that's amazing. I was actually going to speak on that. Like, why do we get so amazed when we see butterflies? Right? She spoke about bringing butterflies to the senior centers, and they love it. Why do we all have that same reaction when we see a butterfly?
I think because they're not here very long. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
The change from a caterpillar to a butterfly is totally illogical.
I know
I think that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Laurie.
That's what brings us the awe.
Yeah.
Is that if it were a logical progression, like from a child to an adult, okay, that we could understand, but it's so hard to contemplate the caterpillar becoming a butterfly.
Wow. Thank you, Laurie, for sharing your story with us. Kyra, the comment about why are we so amazed by butterflies when there's tons of caterpillars? Caterpillars, like thousands, and they're out there.
I think because they're fleeting, and they can be hard to observe because they move around so much,
Yes.
and they're only here for a short amount of time. So it's almost as if it's like a gift, right? When you get to see, or even see that first monarch or the first swallowtail or the first mourning cloak, and you know, different species of butterflies you'll see at different times of the year. And so you know, to me, when the kids see it, they light up, because it's fleeting and it's going by quickly, and not everybody has the opportunity to maybe see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I mean, it's fleeting, but also it brings hope and joy, honestly. I mean, you see this monarch flying in a, you know, 40-acre meadow or something. It's like, how is that small thing making it in this crazy world, you know, amongst all these threats with, you know, climate change, habitat loss, you know, change in, you know, development, etc. So I think when you see that, and knowing that they migrate thousands of miles from Mexico and are just this amazing insect, it's just it really sparks amazement, hope, and joy.
Yeah. And Laurie, I know this is where you shine. Why are butterflies so intriguing for us and bring such hope?
In general, our mental health. We are under such time constraints all the time, and as soon as you have a couple of moments to recharge, it is amazing. The studies have shown on how it reduces stress, reduces blood pressure, all of these things. And this is something that Kyra has been kind of alluding to, is we need more pocket parks in our cities. There is way too much blacktop, way too much heat island effect. And we should be able to soften all of those, and everybody should have that experience, right? No matter where we are, you shouldn't have to go out all the way out to a farm to see nature. You should be able to just go out in your backyard, and it can be done. I am finding some interesting terms now are coming about yardening. So getting rid of your little tiny yards in the city and going back to gardens. And historically, people did not have lawns. They used the property to either grow food, or they grew flower gardens. That was kind of part of the, you know, the estate or the status symbol, if you could afford to have gardeners and everybody was showing off. And then we converted into these lawns, these just kind of, it's, you know, like a desert, as Kevin had said. So creating our own little oasis and getting nature right back in will help your physical and mental health tremendously. And it increases, actually, academic studies have shown that it increases cognitive behavior and calming and all of that. There's just, we are part of nature. And I love what Kyra keeps saying. We are part of nature, and we need to embrace that.
Wow, beautiful. And then we have the moths, right? Those pesky little
Your
things.
nemesis.
My nemesis. I have a comment here from Jeff. He said, do you like grain moths? We have a grain moth problem and have not been able to find the source. I normally try not to kill my fellow earthlings, but these moths are driving my wife nuts. And if I don't eliminate them, she'll think I'm a wuss. So I've been slaughtering them, kind of feeling bad about it. Same with stink bugs. Jeff, I don't even want to give my opinion on this. Are we supposed? Why? Because what I found interesting after I watched the documentary film, and we'll talk about the screening, is that butterflies are just just a mutation of moths, right? I guess that's what we can describe them. So moths are the most dominant, but I don't like them. But and obviously Jeff doesn't either. What should we learn about? Why should we appreciate moths? Why shouldn't Jeff kill his moths?
Well, grain moths, I mean, nobody wants to eat. Sometimes I buy grain and I'll find beetles in there.
Yeah.
So things have to be utilized quickly before eggs hatch. There are insects everywhere. And but we do have to learn how to live with them. Yes, stink bugs are annoying. And when certain populations get to a real point, we might have to battle them. But I think understanding just even mosquitoes and how they are pesky, understanding that they're part of the ecosystem, but having mosquitoes in your yard can be reduced because you have an ecosystem where you have dragonflies and where you have toads and bats and things like that. So you have to create that environment where things are kept in balance. It's when they get out of balance that things become an issue.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great point. I have another comment here from Julie. For Kyra, I believe this is for Kyra. Do you ever discuss or introduce students to how animals lower on the food chain, particularly those with short lifespans, are used as indicators of the overall health of the environment?
Yes, often. And we actually work closely with the Seneca Park Zoo during City Nature Challenge. And so looking at the biodiversity and everybody's role in terms of where they are within our environment. So yes, absolutely. And indicator species too. The importance of things like the sturgeon, especially local. We try to focus as much on our local ecosystem. I think we talked about it earlier about how this is such a rich place for nature, and you don't have to go very far, and all of the community partners are working very hard to kind of grow this connection, whether it's the Maplewood Nature Center that's online, Food Link, Taproot, Helmer Nature Center. I'll be a part of them in West Irondequoit in July. Genesee Land Trust, everyone is working together and creating this incredible kind of connection. And so looking at those keystone species like beaver and otter, sturgeon, like I said, that are coming back to our local area, because that is showing kind of the health of our ecosystems and what we need to be looking for to be able to see the health of our water, our plants and our bird, all of the different living things that make a healthy ecosystem.
Okay, awesome, Kyra. And I want to take this, our last caller, before we go into more details about our screening, because we want to get the community out there to support this documentary film. I have on the line here Judith from Rochester. Judith, you have a comment for our panelists.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you all for this wonderful show today. It's so important to hear about all these wonderful creatures that give life. I mean, it is really just a celebration of life, and they're so vulnerable, and so oftentimes people just disrespect them.
Yes.
And I'm just so happy that you're giving this wonderful presentation today. It's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you for that comment. That was a powerful word. We disrespect them. I felt like she was talking to me, because we don't appreciate it. And after doing my research on this for this discussion, I'm like, wow, okay, maybe I will approach nature a little differently, right? Because everything has a part to play, right? And humans won't be able to survive without the small organisms like the caterpillar. And we want to talk about the extraordinary caterpillar, right, Laurie? And in this documentary film screening that's coming up June 29th, can you tell the public about all our caterpillar enthusiasts who may be interested, how they can be a part of this?
So it's interesting, we were talking about just caterpillars and how the conversation keeps evolving into such a big, broader area. But just to focus on the caterpillars and find out what you can do, just the documentary is so well done.
Yes.
And Dr. Tellamy is an amazing speaker and researcher. So just coming to see him in the film is fascinating in itself. But learning about the Caterpillar Lab and all of the great things that are going on with that. Also, the I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm sorry, from Toronto, the Eco Lab that's actually highlighted about all the community programs that they do. So the panelists are going to compose of Dana from the Eco Lab coming from Toronto, Kevin talking about the Genesee Land Trust and all the great things that they've been doing, Kyra and some more of the nature-based programming. But the main goal is to inspire people to see what they can actually do and how much of a little tiny thing you can do for planting and have a huge impact, and how bringing all of these different groups together makes it even such more of a global impact. In that's our goal. And then to highlight the Saunders Finger Lakes Museum and another destination here in our Rochester Finger Lakes area. There's just so much going on. So I hope people will come. The Dryden Theater is a great venue. I mean, how can you, how often do you go to films there? And probably we should do that more often. But the contrast between the gardens outside at the George Eastman House, the old-fashioned gardens, and then what we're going to be talking about is pretty dramatic. But yet George Eastman House itself is noted for the beautiful gardens and the garden vibes and all of the outdoor activities that they have. It's not just about the historic house and the historic person.
Yes.
It shows how much Rochester has to give. And I just think anybody that has the slightest interest in gardening at all on a personal level to a bigger community neighborhood level really should be there.
Really? And I watched the film a few times, and I would say I'm very much, I would definitely give it 5 stars, right? And just how detailed it is and how we get to see these creatures up close and how beautiful they are. I think everyone will appreciate that. So June 29th at the Dragon Theater.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
What time?
You have to go online and purchase tickets ahead of time. This is really important, not to just try to show up. And the time is 5 o'clock. The doors open. 6 o'clock is when we will start.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we're calling all to witness the extraordinary world of the caterpillar. The screening of the documentary film by Jeff McKay. All right. Yes. Thank you all for joining me for this conversation. It was great. It was great.
Let's do it again. Thanks.
Let's do it again. Thank you, Kyra.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody.
All right. And that's the end of WXXI Connections.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.